That's great. We can put it here. So the video is there. You can see everything. Perfect. Okay, so we'll start with the prayer. So just listen to the prayer.
सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। शांति शांति शांति.
Very good. So welcome back. And we are entering to the third session of the seventh chapter. So far, we covered a brief introduction. We said the seventh chapter is the first chapter in the second section of the Bhagavad Gita. In the second section of the Bhagavad Gita, the key theme is Ishvara, because the first section, the key theme was ourselves. Who am I? That was the key focus. And if you remember, like in the sixth chapter, Krishna was mainly focusing on look within, the meditation. So the seventh chapter, the focus completely shifts to an external thing, which is Ishvara. And the last section, which is the chapters from 13 to 18, the key focus is how to connect this. What is the relationship between the individual and the Ishvara? So the chapter was introduced by Krishna saying that I'm going to talk about myself. And he advised a few disciplines we need to follow. Means you have to do all the spiritual practices, and you have to keep me or knowing Ishvara as a high priority, and you have to have faith in me. So if you do that, you will completely come to know myself. And then he said, like, I'm going to explain you both the direct knowledge and the indirect knowledge. And also he said the rarity of this knowledge. This knowledge is not an easy knowledge. This is something, knowing means once you get it, you don't have to know anything else, because this knowledge is capable of freeing you from all the sufferings. And he also said, like, out of a lot of people striving, only a few people are going to get it, not to discourage you, just because of the fact that the direction of inquiry is not like the usual means of inquiry. So this is what we talked earlier. And today, we will see the fourth verse. So the first means second and third verse, we saw that last week. So today we are going to see the verse 4. This is a complete new topic. A new topic is being introduced. What is the topic is, he is going to introduce who is Ishvara. We all have doubt, right? Who is Ishvara? And we all say that I have devotion to Ishvara. We all say that we surrender to that Ishvara. We all say, and we all go to the temples, churches, and mosques and pray to Ishvara. But who am I praying to? Right? Or who am I loving? Or who am I relating to? If I don't know who it is, mere faith will not give you anything. So that's why the nature of Ishvara is introduced in this verse. So from verse 4 to verse 12, this is the key topic. He is going to introduce the nature of Ishvara. A lot of your doubts, will be cleared in this particular topic. So let's listen to the verse. So we are going to cover only one verse today because this verse has enough stuff for 30 minutes. So let's listen to the chanting.
भूमिरापो नलो वायुः खं मनो बुद्धिरेव च अहङ्कार इति यं मे भिन्ना प्रकृतिरष्टधा
भूमिरापो नलो वायुः खं मनो बुद्धि एव च अहङ्कारम् इति यं मे भिन्नाः prakriti ashtata. So let's listen to that once again. Means let's understand the meaning. Bhumi, apaha, analaha, vayuhu, kham, manaha, buddhi, evacha, ahankaram, idiyam, me, pinna, prakriti ashtataha. So Krishna says, me pinna prakriti ashtata. Meaning my eightfold nature. He is going to introduce who am I, right? That is the topic. Krishna is going to explain who he is. So he tells my eightfold nature. Pinnaha prakriti ashtadaha. My eightfold nature is the following. So he tells Bhumi. Bhumi means earth. Vayu, water. Analaha, fire. Bhumi, apaha, analaha, vayuhu. Kham, space. Manaha, mind. Buddhi, intellect. Ahankaram. Ahankaram means the sense of I-ness. Itiyam me, these are my eightfold nature. So the first description on Ishvara is given as my eightfold nature is earth, water, air, fire, space, mind, intellect, and ahankara. This is my eightfold nature. So let's try to understand this topic. So Krishna is just introducing this topic. So the point is, Krishna is straight entering into that central teaching of this chapter. So if you remember, I said one of the key topic of this chapter is nature of Ishvara. So he is trying to define the God. As you know, defining the God is to define the God, but at least he is trying to indicate what is the nature of the God. So in this particular verse, he is introducing God. Please listen carefully, right? He is introducing Ishvara or the God as the cause of the universe. The material cause of the universe. So in these verses, he is going to introduce the God as two causes of the universe. So if you take any object, as per the vision of Vedanta, forget about Vedanta, even as per the logic, any object you take, there are two causes for that object. So if I take a golden ornament, the golden ornament, for example, if I have a chain, that chain has to have two causes. One is you have to have some material by which you can make that chain. And that cause is known as material cause. If I'm making a pot, I need to have some material by which I can make that pot. If I'm making a shirt, I need to have some material cause for making that shirt. So that material cause of any object is called Upadana Karana. In Sanskrit, that is the terminology. So Upadana Karana. So that's point number one. So any object in the world has to have a material cause. If that object is a material object, it has to have a material cause. So you all are using computers or phone. One of the key element or one of the key aspect of this computer is the CPU. What exactly is the CPU? It has some material, right? It has some, I don't know what exactly, some metal plus minus something else. But just having that material is not going to make the product. if you have a lump of clay, that lump of clay will not automatically become the pot. There has to be a pot maker. A piece of cloth or a piece means a bag of cotton will not automatically transform itself into a finished product called a shirt. So along with the material cause, you have to have an intelligent cause. It is called nimitta karana. So any product, any creation or any object in the world will have two causes. One is called nimitta karana, which is the intelligent cause. And the second thing is upadana karana, which is the material cause. So in this particular verse, Krishna is introducing Ishvara or the Lord as the material cause of the universe. Let's talk about the intelligent cause in a later verse, but understand that material cause, upadana karana, that material by which the entire world is made up of is Ishvara. So the material cause is also Ishvara. So the teaching is started. This verse is going to start the teaching of the 7th chapter. This verse is started by pointing out that the raw materials by which the entire universe is made up of is Ishvara. What exactly is the fabric of this world? Because the fabric of my shirt is cotton. The fabric of the pot is clay. The fabric of a golden ornament is gold. Like that, he is going to say that what exactly is the fabric by which this universe is created? That is Ishvara. And he tells that materials by which the universe is made is known as my lower nature. He tells I have two nature. One is a lower nature and the other one is a higher nature. And the lower nature is known as apara prakriti and the higher nature of Ishvara is known as para prakriti. I'm going to explain that in the next slide, so don't worry about that. So Krishna is saying, but understand that this universe is made up of some material, and whatever is that material by which this universe is made up of is Ishvara. So that is the first point. But before that, let me take a pause. And if you really look at the different schools of thoughts in the whole world, there are different thoughts how this creation has happened. If you really look at Bible, the biblical thought of creation, they called creatio ex nihilo. It's a Latin word. It tells that the whole world is created out of nothing. That is what it means. So God one day decided to create the world, and from nothing the world has created. This is what creatio ex nihilo. You can Google it. It's a Latin word, and even the theology talks about that. So that is the metaphysical model in which the Bible is is depending upon. Now, if you take some of our dualistic philosophy like Gaudiya Vaishnavism and some of our schools, they also believe that. And we call such theories in Sanskrit, we call it as Asat Karya Vada. That is, means I'm not complicating with a lot of information, but those who are interested to know all these things, this will be interesting to them. It is known as Asat Karya Vada. Asat means the world was created using Asat, meaning something that is not real, something out of nothing. Contrary to that, there is an opposite view in the Indian schools, which is called Sat Karya Vada. Sat Karya Vada means the world came out of, means something out of nothing is impossible. So that option is completely ruled out. So that means this material cause of the world comes from something that is legitimate, tangible, something that is real. That is called Sat Karya Vada. The other one is called Asat Karya Vada. So the Sat Karya Vada in the Indian schools itself has two thoughts. One thought is based upon the Sankhya philosophy, which is called Parinama Vada. Parinama Vada, theory of means change or evolution. And the second school, which is supported by Vedanta and Bhagavad Gita, is called Vivarta Vada. So let me just quickly give you the difference between this Parinama Vada and Vivartavada. Parinamavada means what happens is a pupa turns into a butterfly. So what happens? Initially, there was Prakriti and Purusha, the matter and consciousness. And what happened was the modification of that matter is this entire world. So the problem is what? The original stuff lost its significance. It transformed itself into a new item. Right? So that is what the Sankhyans believe. But Vedanta tells, no, the Ishvara, because if the Ishvara's portion or is Ishvara's part turned into the world, and then what is going to happen? The world becomes separate from Ishvara. That is what the idea is. But Vedanta tells no. Vedanta tells Ishvara means the manifest as world. But when Ishvara becomes the world, what is going to happen? Ishvara is never moved away from the world. So the classic example is like when the pot, when the gold becomes the gold ornament, what happens to the gold? If it is a pure gold, the gold keep its existence. The ornament got its existence because of the gold. So like that, Ishvara is there in every inch of the creation. Every bit of the creation, Ishvara is present. Ishvara gives existence to the whole universe. So that is called Vivartavada, projection. It is not a creation, it is projection. Another example is when you see a dream. In that dream, you create mountains, you create objects and everything. But where exactly is the dream exist? The dream is never separate from you. So that's another example. So there are multiple examples. So these are all theory. You don't have to worry about that. But understand that whatever this means, the material by which this world is created, Ishvara is present in every atom of that creation. So you don't have to worry in looking after Ishvara. Whenever you see something good, some glory in the universe, you can see Ishvara there. So that is the point. It shows the connection of the God with the world, because the world is nothing but God's manifestation. Everything I look around is a manifestation of Ishvara. Every energy I see, it is Ishvara's energy. When I see light, it is nothing but Ishvara's manifestation. That is what makes us bow down to everything in this creation. When I see sun, what am I seeing? I am seeing sun as a manifestation of Ishvara. When I see leaf, I see that as a manifestation of Ishvara. When I see food, I see that as a manifestation of Ishvara. There is nothing separate from Ishvara. Ishvara is everywhere. Ishvara is here, there, everywhere. So this is what Krishna is going to teach us, to see the divinity in everything. And this concept, this idea is elaborated in later point, means there is a chapter called Vibhuti Yoga. I believe that it is chapter 11. No, chapter 10. 10 or 11. I think 10, 11. 11th chapter, Krishna is going to explain this. Wherever you see a glory in the world, try to learn to see me there. So this is going to make you see Ishvara in your own eyes. Because if you think that Ishvara will come as Vishnu with four hands, that will not happen. So this is the first point. So we introduced a lot of concepts here. The first one is that Krishna is going to explain the nature of Ishvara, and the Ishvara is introduced as the cause of the universe. And we said, like the cause of the universe, there are two causes. One is material cause, and the other one is the intelligent cause. And the first verse, verse 4, Ishvara is introduced as the material cause. So as I said, like there are two causes of creation, and we use a word here called Prakriti. The word Prakriti in this context means that capacity, that essential capacity to create. Kriti means to do. Krit means to do. Pra means it's a special. So Praharshena Krit. It means it is that special capacity to create. That is what the word Prakriti means here. And he says, I have two Prakritis. The next verse is going to explain this a little bit more. Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti. And this verse is going to talk about Apara Prakriti. Apara Prakriti means it is the material fabric of the universe. That is what it is. And this apara prakriti is born out of the higher prakriti, which is para prakriti, which we are going to talk about that later. Again, this Ishvara's lower nature is expressed as apara prakriti, and this apara prakriti is nothing but the material cause of the universe. So what exactly is this material cause? Krishna is going to explain that further. Krishna tells, what if you really look at the world around you, he creates a model for the material objects of the universe. He tells there are 8 different aspects, because if you really look at, something, right, so for you to create a computer, you may need different components. Like you may need like a glass, you may need aluminum, you may need some other metal, etc. Like that, the entire universe is created with 5 physical matter and 3 subtle matter. Again, this is an arbitrary definition. It is not an hard and fast definition, and this is not a scientific definition. Please understand that. So he tells the physical matter manifests itself into 5 different states. This is an ancient worldview. This is a pre-scientific worldview. In that pre-scientific worldview, because right now we know that how many elements, 105 or 113 or 114, I don't know how many elements are there. But we know that many elements are used to create the world, and we know that below that there is electron, proton, neutron. So this is not a scientific view, but this is a model which is used to describe this universe. So this physical matter itself is manifest into 5 different states. In the ancient literature, we used to have a 5 elemental theory. It is called Pancha Bhuta. 5 basic elements. It represents each state of matter. So there is earth, there is water, there is air, there is fire, and there is space. So if you translate that into the modern world, like you have solid state, you have liquid state, and you have gaseous state, and you have the plasma state where the particles are a little bit more far apart, and finally the absence of every other state, which is space. So this is a loose definition. Even you can substitute this to the 105 elements, that's all fine. Just Krishna is introducing that every tanmatra means that alone exists, which cannot be divided further. So every tanmatra is made up of me, it came from me. So this is the physical matter. And in addition to the physical matter, if you really look at an individual, there is subtle matter. We spend a lot of time explaining the difference between hardware and software. So just like the physical matter is there, there is subtle matter. And this subtle matter can be divided in multiple ways. If you really look at the higher Vedantic textbook, you can see 19 components for this subtle matter, like Panchaprana, the ability, means the karmendriyas, meaning the power of perception, the power of action. So 15. Then Manaha, Buddhi, Ahangara, Chitta. So there is another classification is there, but he's using a simplified model. In that simplified model, he said that subtle matter is, there are 3 components. One is called mind, the second one is called intellect, and the third component is called the individuality or the ego. Something not the ego is bad, that type of ego is not talking. He's saying that it is a sense of I-ness. So the entire world, the physical as well as the all material world is made up of these 8 components. And Krishna tells that these 8 components are nothing but me. In other words, Krishna is saying that the whole world is a manifestation of these 8 components. It's again a model. Don't think that this is not scientific. That is not the intent here. The intent here is to show that whatever is the building block used to build this universe came from Ishvara. And Ishvara is not separate from that. That is the point. I think we have a lot of background noise coming from one mic. Rajesh, if you could move that one, that would be great. So this apara prakriti is again explained. So the word used is iyam. Iyam means this entire world. not just one piece or the other. This entire universe is my nature, my prakriti or me prakriti. It is classified in 8 different ways. The combination of these solid, liquid, gas, plasma, plus these 3 mind, intellect, and ego, that constitutes the entire world. You cannot pick anything outside of this definition. That's for sure. So this 8-fold subtle constituents, beginning with earth, it is the fabric of the entire universe. Krishna here using a teaching methodology. It is called a prakriya to teach the creation theory. It means those who study Vedanta, they know the teaching methodology plays a very important role in the study of Vedanta. For example, we use Dridrishya Viveka as a teaching methodology. We use this Shariratraya as a teaching methodology. Like that, this Srishti Prakriya is another teaching methodology. So the intention of teaching using a Prakriya is to point out that there is nothing other than Ishvara in this world. So that is the whole idea. So everything manifested or unmanifested in the world, every material is made up of these 8 elements. So one more time, I just wanted to go back and talk to you a little bit about the creation theory in the Bhagavad Gita, right? So as per the vision of Vedanta, there is one Upanishad called Chandogya Upanishad. This Chandogya Upanishad beautifully explains how the world has manifested. So the explanation, I believe that it is in the 6th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad. This is brilliantly explained. It tells, before the existence of this universe, there was only one reality existed, and that is called as Sat. Sat means the pure existence, but it is known as absolute reality. So there was only Sat in the universe before the manifestation of this universe. And this Sat Vastu, that is how it is being defined as. Sat Vastu means Sat object. It is cannot be objectified. Just for the convenience, we refer it as Sat Vastu. So this, it means there was nothing other than this Sat Vastu, or there is no part for this Sat Vastu. That is what is expressed in the next verse. For example, if you take a human being, there are 2 things, right? If I take me, I'm saying that in this particular example, there is no other human being. That is point number 1. Second thing is that if I look myself, right, there is no parts. That is wrong, because my hands are different from legs. There is different part, or I can differentiate that particular object if I take human being as one entity. So here it tells there is nothing other than itself, and also there is no part. So the word used in the Upanishad is Ekam Eva Advitiyam, one and non-dually one. This was the reality before the world or the universe got manifested. And what happens? Everything else got manifested from this Sat. This is the Srishti Prakriya. So here what is going to happen is the whole material world got manifested from this Sat. And as per the ancient world model, these 8 elements got manifested from this Sat Vastu. So these 8 elements are the Panchabhutas, and then this subtle elements called mind, intellect, and ahankara. So this is an arbitrary model. You can always say that why 8 elements? Why don't I say that 22 elements? Or why don't I say 30 elements? That's all fine. This is just an arbitrary model which tells that every material piece in this universe is manifested from that Sat Vastu. That is the point. For example, if you take Sankhya, you get 19 elements, subtle elements. So Vedanta 19. If you take another school, you will say that the number of material elements are more. And if you go back to Upanishad period, you will say that it is only 3 elements. So it doesn't matter how many elements are there. But what Krishna is saying is that every material object in this universe is constitutes of some basic fabric or basic building blocks. And that building blocks came from this Sat. And that Sat is me. That is the first point. So here is what it is. So from this Satvastu, which is the absolute reality, is represented by the sound symbol Om in our literature. From the Satvastu, you can see the physical matter got evolved. So the Upanishad tells first matter got evolved was space. From that space, fire got evolved. From fire, air got evolved. Air, water got evolved. And water, the earth got evolved. And in the earth, what happens? The human being got manifested. So this is what the material evolution. So 5 Panmatras or 5 basic elements evolved from that Satvastu. And the 3 subtle matter got evolved. Ahankara, the individuality in you. The mind, again, mind is considered as a subtle matter. And the intellect is a special version of mind which can pull information and make judgment. Nishchayatmika vritti is intellect. So that is also evolved from the Satvastu. So the material fabric, whether it is a physical matter or a subtle matter, it is nothing but this Satvastu or the absolute reality. So this is exactly what Krishna is explaining in this verse. So one more point. Now we need to understand, okay, if it is a Parinamavada, I can understand that, yeah, the matter came out of Ishvara. But is that matter separate from Ishvara? Krishna tells no. The purpose is to show that this matter came from the Satvastu, but this matter is never apart from the Satvastu. Look at the pot. Where is that pot is away from the clay? Absolutely not. The clay is the very make of the pot. And if you take the clay out of the pot, there is no existence for the pot. So without undergoing any change in itself, the Satvastu manifest in the form of the world. That is, and this ability of the Satvastu, which allows itself to manifest as material object, is called Maya. That is one definition of Maya. Maya is another complicated term in our Vedantic literature. So don't worry. This is just saying that the Ishvara or the absolute reality, from that all the material world got evolved. What is the characteristics of the material world? It is inert and insentient. That is why it is called matter. Whether it is physical matter or the subtle matter, whether it is the physical body or the mind or the intellect or the ego. The mind will not work if the consciousness is not there. If the intellect will not work if the consciousness is not there. So it is not the consciousness of the neuroscientist. Again, I always try to explain that. When we refer consciousness in Vedanta, it is not the scientist, means the definition that means that is propagated by the neuroscientist. Means neuroscientist, it is the ability of the mind. It is a property of the mind. Whereas in the Vedanta, it tells that by which you are aware of your thoughts and emotions. That is what is consciousness. So that consciousness is separate from mind. So the mind is considered as subtle matter, whereas the physical matter is considered as it's the physical matter. So this creation means it is the manifestation of the Satvastu, is never away from the Ishvara. Just like the clay is pretty much present in every bit of the pot. Just like the gold is present in every bit of the golden ornament. Just like the water is present in every bit of the wave. Ishvara is present in every bit of the creation. Ishvara is not away from the creation. So when you look at the world, when you see a paper, when you see everything, understand that the existence of that object is Ishvara. So this is the vision that helps us to see Ishvara in all over the creation. So this is the essence of this verse. So the summary of this verse is Krishna started defining the God. He gives the lower nature of the God, which is called Apara Prakriti, which is the Upadana Karana of the universe, which is the material cause of the universe. And he said the whole world got manifested from 8 raw materials. And that 8 raw materials, 5 of them are physical matter and 3 of them are subtle matter. And the combination of this is the entire world. and that is me, and I am present very much in my original form in all these fabrics. This is what the essence of this verse. So as I was expecting, I took almost 30 minutes itself to explain this. That's why I said like there is only one verse today, because the next week also there is going to be a little bit, we are going to explain the para prakriti, and then from there we are going to building this chapter up. So that is going to help you to see the real nature of Ishvara. So look at the change in the topic, because if you really look at chapter 6, Krishna was talking about sit, look deep inside yourself. Here we are looking outside. The whole approach got changed. Okay, so let me pause here. Any questions?
So, Rajaji, earlier you said, while explaining the material world, that this is like a projection of Ishvara.
Correct.
Right? Does that mean that the material world is not real?
Material world is relative. So look at the pot. The pot is real. Reality means what? Reality means there are two types of reality. One is called absolute reality. The other one is called relative reality. So the absolute reality means that which is not negated at any point of time, right? So if you really look at the pot, what happens at a particular period of time in the history, the pot will be, and what is going to happen is the pot exists for some time, and eventually what is going to happen? The pot get destroyed. So the pot enjoys as a reality, but for a shorter period of time. Whereas the clay, right? Before the pot, the clay was there. And after the pot, the clay will be there. So the Sat Vastu, which I was talking earlier, it was there before the creation, and the universe came into being for some time. And at that point of time, it enjoys that reality. And what exactly is the duration of the universe? It might be millions of years. But millions of years means that, again, that is not permanent. So it enjoys as a relative reality. The moment we say relative reality, it enjoys as its reality for some time. Eventually, it will merge back. Whereas the cause or the Ishvara will continue to exist always.
So, Rajaji, is the analogy of the world being like a dream, a very long dream, might be millions and billions of years, but is that analogy accurate at some level?
Every example has its own limitation. So if I say that yes, this analogy can be used to express that the material cause is me and it exists in me, all that is there. But is there any reality or existence for that? Means it is an illusionary reality. So what happens? The dream is not real. Means in a way, it is not real when I consider the real world. But that is why we have three terminologies. One is called Satyam, the second one is called Mithya, and the third one is called Tucham. So relative reality means it enjoys an order of reality. It has an existence. It exists for some time. So the world exists. I interact with you. You interact with me. We know each other. So that is happening. And we cannot say that that is illusionary and that is gone. Absolutely not. But it happens for a temporary period of time. And again, means we cannot go beyond and explain this, because again, we are talking about something beyond time and space. So even the physicists, right, they say, right, you cannot explain that part much because of the limitation of the language and because the limitation of our perception. Only thing we can say is that the existence we enjoy right now, yes, they enjoys an order of reality. I cannot say that I cannot pay my mortgage because it is illusionary, relative reality. Absolutely not. I have to take care of myself. I have to go and work. I have to earn myself, because this enjoys a reality. And that reality is relative reality. Why it is not called absolute reality? If it was absolute reality, it should be existing in all period of time. If you remember, in the second chapter, we defined the absolute realities are as Trikala Abadidam, that which is not changing in all the three periods of time. So that is what is Satyam. And this nature of this Satvastu is brilliantly defined. So the God defined, it means we'll see that later, using three words. Satyam, Jnanam, Anandam, Brahma. Satyam, it is absolute reality. Jnanam, it is of knowledge. And Anantam, infinite. Infinity, again defined in three orders. One is called like Desha, Kala, Vastu, Paricheda. So it is not conditioned by space, it is not conditioned by time, and it is not conditioned by objectivity. So this is the vision of the Vedanta. Look at the solid, rational argument put forth before 5,000 years back. How solid it is. You're not saying that creatio ex nihilo, the whole thing came from nothing. So this is not that type of theory. Means I'm not blaming anybody, but I'm just pointing out the difference. This is the difference. You're saying that something out of nothing is illogical and it cannot be entertained in this vision. So they say that this is how it happened. And this is pretty much aligned with the modern physics, if you really think about this. And this is what impressed Erwin Schrödinger, one of the founders of quantum mechanics. Not one of the founders, he's the main founder, into Vedanta. Yes, Bhunaji.
I'm looking at it here. The Srishti Prakriya, right? Prakriya.
Yep.
As per the Chandogya Upanishad, you said it was only 3 elements, right?
Yes.
Then we move to the Tanmatra Prakriya, where it is 5 more is added to it. No,
not 5 more.
Why you didn't explain about the Taittiriya Upanishad, which says only about Pancha Kosha, right?
No, the Panchakosha is a different model. Like there are different prakriyas. The Panchakosha prakriya is used to understand who am I and who I am not. A prakriya used for self-enquiry. And Mandukya Upanishad uses another prakriya called Avasthatraya, right? Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti. So that is another prakriya used to identify who I am and who I am not. Because it tells like when I wake up, I identify myself with the waking state. When I dream, I identify with my dreams. And when I am in deep sleep, I'm not identifying with anything. So it tells you clearly that where exactly my input source comes in, that is what is going to be my experience. So that's how it differentiates between who am I and who am I not. Panchakosha is also, it divides the human personality into 5. Like Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manamaya, Vijnanamaya.
Correct.
So the Chandogya Upanishad, it means it is not saying that, not talking about the subtle part, because the stula matter, right? The physical matter, as per Bhagavad Gita and other Upanishad, it is 5, meaning earth, water, air, fire, and space. Whereas when it comes to Chandogya Upanishad, it is introducing only 3, earth, water, and air.
Okay.
So the fire and space is absent there because it's a model. That's all. Means you can always fit this into three element theory or 5 element theory. But what Krishna wanted, let's not get hold upon whether it is 3 element or 5 element or 8 element, but whatever is the basic elements. Because right now, if you really look at science, it is not 505, it is 103 or 114. So now tomorrow we may come up 200. So whatever is the basic elements, that is like Krishna is saying that it came from me. One more thing is that science and Bhagavad Gita is not a scientific book. Of course, it has science, but it is not a scientific book. If anybody wants to study science, better they take a physics book. That is what I would say. Like
so the order.
Yeah.
First he created space and then earth came the last, right? So
Correct.
the Lokam also says Bhumi Rapo Nalo Vayu. So the order is little different in this.
Correct. The reason is Krishna wanted to introduce to Arjuna what he is more familiar with. Solid is the more familiar, or the last evolved one is the most familiar one. So he
Okay.
started with that, and it is a reverse order. So the order is, if you really go back to my previous slide, I kept the order exactly as it.
Correct. I was looking at it. Space
Yeah.
by
So I reversed the order. I put that exactly in the order of the Upanishads.
Upanishads. Okay. So that is just for us to understand it,
This
basically.
is for us to understand.
This is earth, and then okay. And then so he's saying he is the 5 elements and he's also the 3 subtle elements, right?
Correct. Correct.
So I am everything. So I am
I am everything. The combination of entire material world is the combination of these 8 elements.
So the eightfold which you are talking, I thought it is layered on each.
No.
It doesn't stand alone, because from Swamiji's book it says that they are all a part of each element. That's what it
Yeah.
says.
No, I think Swamiji is not talking about that. He is only talking about the space came from, sorry, fire came from space, and the combination of this forms the entire universe. Pinnaha, Prakriti, Ashtadaha. And if you really wanted to go in detail, in Tattvabodha, there is something called a Panchikarana. So how the other matter forms, right? They say like you take a component of space and 1/5 of this, and then you take the 1/5 of the subtle element, the combination of that would form different elements. So this is how the whole model works. But on a gross level or on a higher level, what we need to understand is, just like the combination of these different combination of these tanmatras will form the entire universe.
Okay.
If I take a phone, it will be a combination of this. If I take a tree, it will be a combination of this. The only thing that is missing in this is the consciousness. That is what he is going to introduce in the next verse. So my lower nature is the matter, and my higher nature is the consciousness, and that is also me. So in
So the
essence,
Anandam and all doesn't come in this at all.
which one?
The Anandam?
No. Anandam it's an experience.
Oh,
Again,
that's
it is
okay.
forms in your mind. So the Anandamaya Kosha is part of your subtle matter. And the Ananda is experienced because of the consciousness, but Anandamaya is all that is part of matter. There is only this much. The material matter is there, the consciousness is there. And I am the matter, I am the consciousness. That's it.
I've heard Taittiriya Upanishad discourses, so I'm trying to match. Each Upanishad has something or other, but I think everything should talk about the same thing, right?
No, it is talking about the same thing, because the Taittiriya Upanishad is focusing on an analysis on who am I. So who am I starts with the deep analysis called Drik, Drishya, Viveka. So it will tell who is the subject and who is the object. So I will share you our Vedanta material, because this is exactly what I was trying to cover up in that Vedanta class. Because when we get into Upanishad, what is going to happen is these Upanishads will take, each Upanishad will take one of these prakriya and go in deep. But we need to understand what exactly is the problem they are trying to solve. So in our Vedanta class in 18 lessons, we are trying to boil it down to the whole process in a step-by-step manner. So Rajesh ji or Rohit ji, you are all there. So this is what we were trying to do, right? In a step-by-step process, we were trying to put a roadmap how it is happening. And then when we go to Upanishad, we can say that, okay, Chandogya Upanishad is going to talk about this Srishti Prakriya, whereas Taittiriya Upanishad is going to talk about this Panchakosha Prakriya, whereas our Mandukya Upanishad is going to talk about the Avastatraya Prakriya. So that becomes very clear when we go through this Prakarana process. So we need to study a Prakarana book properly, like a Tattvabodha or Atmabodha or Vivek Chudamani, or we need to have that roadmap laid out. And it was very much struggling for me to put that roadmap, because it took, as I said, like 12 or 14 years for me to map this out, because every Upanishad goes to one topic and go in detail. It's not like Bhagavad Gita, it is ordered like this. Bhagavad Gita is brilliantly sequenced. Upanishads are not like that.
Interesting.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Rajesh, I don't know how we are doing on time, but a question that has always bothered me is this apparent inconsistency between different philosophies. So like you were saying earlier that the Dvaita philosophy believes in everything came out of nothing, whereas Advaita or Vedanta says no, that is rubbish. Things, or maybe that's a strong word, but everything came out of something.
Right.
I'm always confused by, by which is correct. And even though I feel very strongly about one,
Yeah. So
It's
I
me
think,
when I
I think that's a good question. What I would propose is we will take up one session. This is, you are not the one who is asking me this question. So I got a request from somebody from our Bhagavad Gita class to do one dedicated session on one topic called Dvaita, Advaita, Vishishta Advaita. So we are
that'll be
going to take,
fantastic.
what is it?
That'll be fantastic.
Yeah, so this is an
Just
intellectual
whatever.
topic, but I will do that. I will take one topic one day and talk about Dvaita, Advaita, and Vishishta Dvaita, and I will take some verses and see how they are interpreted by different masters, and I will try to identify a common thread between both three, because typically if you go and ask the Advaitan, they will say that the other one is not good. So I'm taking a complete different approach. I'm finding truth in all of that, and I'm presenting it as a three different point of views of the same truth.
I think
Because,
you did in our class.
yeah, I did that in your class. But
with the drop of the ocean.
yeah. And I'll put the figure, and I was trying to analyze how the Dvaitin will see, how the Advaitin will see. So I'll do that in our North Brunswick one day with all these three. But this is a good question. It is a good old question, and that is a question for almost every seeker has, because even if you take Bhagavad Gita commentaries of different schools, you may get two different perspectives, sometimes apparently contradicting. So we need to talk about that. So that's why I
Thank
just
you.
introduced that different thoughts like Asatkaryavada, Satkaryavada, and within Satkaryavada itself, there are two thoughts. One is called Parinamavada, and the other one is Vivartavada. Once you understand the whole picture, you can pick what exactly is the path you want to follow. And every path has its own validity. Don't think that if you go through one path, you will not end the destination. It is fine.
Mm.
That's fantastic, Rajaji. I wanted to say that also during that talk, if you can give some practical tips
Yep.
that, a seeker
Yep.
who is exposed to all these different, philosophies
to do
which are
that.
not always consistent,
Yep.
how can he navigate himself at a practical level
Yep.
without getting disillusioned or without getting like sidetracked?
Correct. I will do that. I will say that what exactly those type of seekers, this path would be better. I would even,
Right.
this is
right.
my point of view on that. Of course, it would be my point of view, but I will definitely bring my point of view out. But this chapter is a fantastic chapter. You have already seen that there is a shift in the topic, and I took some time to explain this because this foundation is very important to understand this chapter properly. So with that, we can stop here. Please stay safe and pray. The numbers are alarming, but I'm sure with the social distancing and with this isolation, all of us will be safe. I pray that the entire world get better soon. This is a testing time. This will pass away. So please take care of yourself and pray at least 5 minutes a day. Sit and pray to the betterment of the world. I always believe that collective prayer has a lot of power. So Bhuvanaji, I would request you to chant the Purnamada, and we can stop there.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om.
Thursday, we are continuing our Vedanta class through Zoom. So Thursday from 8 to 9, we will be doing the next topic of our introduction to Vedanta. I believe that it is 13th session. So we are going to be just covered up to identification and attachment. So that topic we will elaborate, and then we will go to this creation theory in that introduction to Vedanta. So that is Thursday from 8 to 9.
Which group gets this messages? Because
projects Vedanta group. So Rajesh ji, could you post that group's link here in this group? Anybody
Yeah,
want
sure. Yeah, I'll do that.
So this is the Thursday's class, and then Sunday we have 5 to 6. We are continuing chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita.
So is it 8 to 9 or 7:30? We starting Vedanta class?
8 to 9 would be convenient. Somebody was telling 7:30 is also fine to me. Means we can do that, because somebody was telling me that 8 to 9 would be more convenient.
Okay, that's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
What number are we? I mean, how many sessions have been completed?
We covered 12 sessions and we have 6 more sessions, I believe. So 5 more sessions and 1 recap. So that is what the introduction to Vedanta. So there we introduce this topic very systematically so far, drawing a line from the beginning to this particular topic. So we covered different prakriyas there. We already did Drishya Viveka, we did Panchakosha, we did Shariratraya, and Avastatraya. So that much we covered. And now we are coming to an analysis on, we already analyzed Atma. So now we are going to talk about, we talked about identification and attachment. I need to check where we left, but I thought that is where we left.
So Rajesh, if you have already, if you've not attended any of the Vedanta classes, then maybe it's
still fine. Don't worry. You can join. You can try to cover the next topic, which is the creation aspect.
okay.
So that's a kind of a new topic. This topic, which we started discussing today, that's what that will be elaborated a little bit more, because how the creation happened. So we will take the evolution, like from Sat, how this everything got manifested, and the step-by-step process, and how do you see God through an external inquiry. So that's very important. So that is that Srishti Prakriya will be elaborated in detail based upon the Chandogya Upanishad teaching.
By the way, if you want to catch up on any of those classes, it's all recorded. It should be on the YouTube channel, and you can subscribe to the podcast also, if you just interested in the video audio part of it. So it's all there.
Thank you.
Okay. Stay safe.
Rajesh, quick question. Tomorrow, what time is the Python class?
Python is at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah, I think since we're having these one-on-ones, I mean the online sessions, I think everything is at 8, not at 7:30
because
anymore. Yeah.
we cannot do 90 minutes online. We will lose the concentration.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's
Everything
why,
will be at 8.
yeah, 8 to 9. Okay, thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you.
Thank
Hari
you.
Om.
Yeah. Bye.